In the grand estate of Chief Adu, the air was always thick with perfume, secrets, and quiet footsteps. Gardeners trimmed hedges as housemaids swept marble floors that shone like mirrors. But on this particular morning, it wasn't the scent of jasmine or the sound of laughter that filled the compound. It was whispers. Two housemaids, Aoife and Nini, stood near the laundry line, hands busy but ears sharp. They leaned close, eyes darting to be sure no one was listening. "Have you noticed how the chief looks at the new maid?" Aoife whispered. "Hmm," Nene replied, lowering her voice. "You mean Amara? The one with the calm eyes? I've seen it too. He always finds an excuse to pass near the kitchen when she's there." Eve chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Some say he even asked her how she sleeps." "Who does that? The chief never talks to staff like that." They giggled, but their laughter was nervous, because in this mansion, gossip could buy favor or destroy lives. Just beyond the courtyard, Madame Lamy, the chief's second wife, stood behind a curtain on the balcony. She had come to water her flowers, but the maid's whispers drifted up to her like smoke. She froze. Her fingers tightened around the watering can. "The new maid," she muttered to herself. "So that's why he's been smiling lately?" Below her, Amara walked quietly to the well, a basket of linens balanced on her hip. The sunlight caught her skin like honey. She bowed her head when she saw the chief approach, but her calm only deepened his smile. The maids watched from a distance, whispering again. "See how she blushes when he speaks? I told you, Nenny." Something is happening, and though they couldn't hear what was said, they saw everything. The chief's gentle hand resting on Amara's shoulder, the way Madame Lamy's shadow stiffened upstairs, and how jealousy, quiet and poisonous, began its slow walk through the house. The mansion no longer hummed with ordinary noise. There was something else now, an invisible thread of tension that pulled from corridor to corridor. Madame Lamy's hands moved gracefully over her jewelry box, but her mind was elsewhere. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the chief's smile, and the quiet way Amara lowered her gaze. By noon, her patience had thinned. In the kitchen, Amara was bent over a tray of freshly washed fruits when Madame Lamy entered. The air changed immediately. The maids froze, pretending to busy themselves with anything at all. "Amara," Madame Lamy said, her voice smooth as oil but sharp beneath the surface. "Yes, madam," Amara replied, setting down the tray. "You seem to be settling in quickly." "The chief speaks well of your work," Amara bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, madam. I only try to serve faithfully." Madame Lamy smiled, though her eyes stayed cold. "Good. Keep it that way. In this house, loyalty is everything, and misplaced affection can ruin even the most beautiful face." A hush fell. The other maids dared not look up. Madame Lamy turned to leave, her perfume lingering long after her footsteps faded. Amara stood still for a long moment, her heart unsteady. She did not fully understand the warning, but she felt its weight. That evening, as lanterns flickered across the compound, the chief passed the courtyard and paused. Amara was folding linens again, her voice carrying softly through the night as she hummed a prayer under her breath. He watched her for a moment, just long enough for the old gardener to notice, and by the next morning, the whispers had grown teeth. 3 days after Madame Lamy's warning, the chief announced that his birthday feast would be held that weekend. Drums were polished, the cook ordered special meats from the market, and every corner of the estate was swept until it shone. Amara was chosen to help prepare the chief's table, an honor that stirred more than admiration. When Madame Lamy heard, her lips curved into a slow smile that did not reach her eyes. "So," she murmured to herself, "even the kitchen now belongs to her." That afternoon, she called her maid, Halima. "Fetch me the small jar from the wooden chest," she said. The maid hesitated. "The one with the red string, madam?" "Yes," Lamy replied, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Halima's hands trembled as she handed it over. A tiny clay jar filled with fine white powder. Lamy unwrapped it carefully, the scent faint and bitter. "Just a pinch," she whispered, enough to make her weak. Nothing more. By sunset, the courtyard glowed with lanterns. Amara, dressed in simple white, carried the chief's drink to his table, her smile calm, her steps measured. But just as she set the goblet down, Madame Lamy rose from her seat. "Wait," she said, her voice sweet but sharp enough to slice the air. "Such an important occasion, the chief's own birthday. deserves a servant who tastes before her master. A hush fell over the hall. Amara paused, unsure. The chief looked confused but nodded. It is tradition, Lami added smoothly, eyes gleaming. With steady hands, Amara lifted the cup and sipped. A moment passed. 2. Then she swayed, just slightly, and placed the goblet down. Gas rippled through the room. The chief stood, alarmed, but before panic could spread, Amara straightened again. I am fine, she said softly, though her lips had gone pale. The chief's gaze darkened. He looked toward Madame Lamy. Her fingers gripped her necklace too tightly, and from behind the pillars, 2 housemaids, Efe and Neni, exchanged frightened looks. They had seen Halima pass the clay jar earlier that day. The whispers were no longer whispers. By morning, the entire house would know that the birthday feast had ended not with music, but with suspicion thick enough to taste. The morning after the feast, the mansion felt colder. Even the birds seemed to sing more cautiously, as if the air itself was watching. The chief did not come down for breakfast. Instead, he sent word that no one was to leave the estate until further notice. The maids whispered, Halima cried in secret, and Madame Lamy, dressed in her finest wrapper, pretended to be calm, but her fingers never stopped moving. By midday, the chief summoned everyone to the courtyard. His face was solemn, his voice quiet but heavy with command. Last night, he began, a strange thing happened at my own table. A servant fell ill from the very cup meant for me. No one breathed. He turned to Amara, who stood weak but steady beside the old gardener. Amara, my child, he said softly, you were almost taken from us. Tell me, who gave you that drink? Amara hesitated, eyes downcast. It was already on the tray, Chief. I do not know who placed it there. Before the chief could respond, a trembling voice broke through the silence. Chief, forgive me. All eyes turned to Halima, who fell to her knees, weeping. I did not mean to harm her. Madam told me it was only herbs to calm her nerves. She said it would make the girl obedient. The courtyard erupted. Gasps, murmurs, cries of disbelief. Madame Lamy froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The chief's expression hardened. Lamy, he said, his voice carrying the weight of thunder. Is this true? For a heartbeat, she tried to hold his gaze. But truth has a way of burning through silence. Her composure cracked. I only meant to protect what's mine, she whispered. You've changed, Adu. You no longer see me. The chief turned away. You brought shame into this house, poison to my table, deceit to my heart. He raised his hand, and 2 guards stepped forward. Take Madame Lamy to her father's compound, he ordered. She will stay there until I decide her fate. The courtyard buzzed with disbelief. As the guards led her away, Madame Lamy looked back. Not at the chief, but at Amara. For the first time, her eyes held not anger, but sorrow. And when the gates closed behind her, a long silence settled over the mansion. The chief walked toward Amara, his voice softer now. You risked your life for me without knowing it. From this day, you will not serve as a maid. You will serve as the keeper of this house. The other servants bowed their heads, part in respect, part in wonder. But far away in a quiet room at her father's home, Madame Lamy stared out at the road, the same road that led back to the chief's estate, and her heart, though bruised, whispered a dangerous vow. This story is not over. Weeks passed. The mansion found its rhythm again. Laughter returned to the halls, and Amara's gentle ways softened even the sternest hearts. The chief, once proud and distant, now spent his evenings in the courtyard, listening to her hum softly while the crickets answered in the dark. Peace, it seemed, had finally returned to the house of Adu. But peace, like perfume, cannot always hide the scent of smoke. One humid evening, as the lanterns flickered in the wind, a rider appeared at the gates, a messenger from Madame Lamy's father. He brought troubling news. Madame Lamy was gravely ill. The chief frowned, torn between resentment and pity. Prepare the cars, he said. I will go see her. Amara stepped forward quietly. Let me come with you, Chief. Perhaps she will receive me better than you. The chief hesitated, then nodded. They arrived at dusk. Lamy's father's compound was silent, the air heavy with incense and sorrow. Inside, Madame Lamy lay upon a mat woven with gold thread. Her beauty faded, her eyes hollow. When she saw Amara kneel beside her, a flicker of surprise crossed her face. "You came," she whispered. "I came to forgive you," Amara said softly. Lamy's eyes glistened. "You are a better woman than I. I let jealousy turn my heart into dust." Amara reached for her hand, but Lamy's grip trembled. "There is something you should know," she whispered, her voice frail. "The poison meant for you did not come from my hands alone." Amara's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Before she could ask again, Lamy's body convulsed with a harsh cough. Her father rushed in, holding a small cup. "It was her tea," he cried. "She drank it not an hour ago." The chief rose sharply. "But who prepared it?" A cry echoed from outside, sharp and desperate. They ran to the courtyard. There, near the well, lay Halima, Lamy's maid. Foam touched her lips. Beside her was a small pouch of the same white powder once hidden in the chest. The truth sank in like a stone. Halima had poisoned Madame Lamy's tea, the same way she had once poisoned Amara's drink, and then taken her own life out of fear and guilt. The chief bowed his head. "Karma walks silently," he murmured, "but she never loses her way." Lamy's eyes fluttered shut, her last breath thin as silk. A faint, peaceful smile touched her lips. Part remorse, part release. When they returned home, Amara placed a single white flower on the household altar. Her whisper lingered in the still air. "May every jealous heart learn patience before it destroys itself." And in the quiet nights that followed, when the wind stirred the mango trees, the servants swore they sometimes heard a woman's voice, soft, sorrowful, and fading. "Forgive me, Amara. Forgive me." The sun rose gently over Chief Adu's estate, spilling gold across the courtyard. The air felt different now, lighter, freer, as if the mansion itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Amara moved through the halls, no longer in the servant's cloth, but in a soft blue wrapper the chief had gifted her. She did not carry trays or sweep floors anymore. Instead, she kept the household's records, settled disputes among the staff, and saw to it that peace stayed where jealousy once lived. The chief watched her often, silently, his heart both grateful and humbled. He had learned, as all great men must, that loyalty does not wear fine clothes. It walks quietly, doing good when no one is watching. One evening, as the lanterns were lit, the old gardener spoke to the younger servants who gathered around. "Do you see that woman?" he said, pointing toward Amara as she watered the flowers. "She was once a maid, yet when envy rose against her, she stood with grace. And when her enemy fell, she did not dance. She forgave." The younger maid frowned. "But why forgive one who wished her harm?" The old man smiled. "Because forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength that keeps the heart from rotting." That night, as the moonlight bathed the compound in silver, Amara sat by the balcony. Her voice drifted softly through the air, the same song she used to hum when she was just a servant girl. Only now her melody carried peace instead of fear. And for those who heard her story, the lesson was clear. Jealousy burns only the hand that holds it, and love, when pure, cannot be poisoned,